All right, good evening. Welcome to the Rosh Chodesh Beer and Wings edition of the Kahal Yereim Daf Yomi. This is an intense spread, and thank you very much to our wings and beer sponsor. That's you, right?
Yep.
Dr. Moish and Rebbitzin Rus. Appreciate it very, very much. The wings are delicious. The beer is cold, and all right, we're ready to go. Daf Yomi for the week is sponsored anonymously in the merit of all those in our community who are in need of a shidduch. We should get that. And tonight's Daf, Wings and Beer, are sponsored by Moshe and Ruth Greenbaum in honor of our dedicated president, Jeff Walden family, and our dedicated Magid Shiur, Rabbi Loiterman and family. So that's amazing. Thank you so much, and my family appreciates it. We are at the Mishnah, on the bottom of Chaf Zayin Amud Beis. Good place to begin. Hashochet es hazevach lizrok damo bachutz. We have been talking about pigul. Pigul, as we up until this point already know, but our Mishnah is going to repeat it now and tell us officially, you have the wrong intention. You have intention to invalidate your sacrifice during one of the 4 blood services: slaughtering, catching the blood, bringing the blood close to the mizbeach, sprinkling the blood. In order to do the service outside of the correct place, or outside, in order to do a consumption service, which is eating or burning the offering, outside of the proper time or place. That makes it pigul. If it's outside the proper time, it's pigul. If it's outside the proper place, it's just puzzle. So the Mishnah says, somebody slaughters the korban, lizrok damo bachutz, in order to, he has in mind that he's going to sprinkle the blood outside, o miktsas doma bachutz, or not all of the blood, but even some of the blood, he's going to do outside the azara. Lahaktir emurav bachutz, or he's going to burn the fats outside the azara, outside of the courtyard of the Beis HaMikdash. The azara is the courtyard of the Beis HaMikdash. So if I use that phrase without translating it, o miktas emurav bachutz, or even part of the fats outside of the courtyard of the Beis HaMikdash. Le'echol bisaro bachutz, he's going to eat the meat, right? So these are the 3 things that get consumed: the blood, the fats, and the meat. So he's going to eat the meat outside of the place that you can eat the meat of the korbanos. That is for some kodshe kodshim. We said you have to eat those in the azara. For kodshe kalim, you have to eat them in Yerushalayim. Oh, kazayis mi b'sara b'chutz, or if you can eat even a kazayis, that's an olive's volume of the meat. Olecho kazayis me or ha'elia, or you're going to eat from a kazayis of the skin of the tail b'chutz, outside of the location of the Beis HaMikdash. Puzzle ve'ein bo kares. So now that makes you puzzle. Why? Because you're doing it outside, because your intent is to do it in the wrong location. The bad intent here is wrong location. Wrong location makes the sacrifice invalid. Now, lizrok damo lemachar, however, he has intent for the wrong time. He's going to throw the blood tomorrow. Miktsas damo lemachar, a part of the blood tomorrow. Lehaktir emurav lemachar, he's going to burn the fats tomorrow. O miktsas emurav lemachar, or some of it tomorrow. Lechol b'saro lemachar, he's going to eat it after the time, right? Tomorrow. O kazayis mi b'saro lemachar, or he's going to eat a kazayis of the meat. O lechol kazayis mi or ha'elya lemachar, or he's going to eat a kazayis from the tail tomorrow. Then that's pigul. That is the concept of pigul, and chayav of kares, and for that you get kares. There's our official definition of pigul, which we knew, but now it's official. Okay, now Savrua, the Chachamim, said as far as burning or alya k'alya dami, the skin of the tail, right, is considered to be like the rest of the tail, and it has to be burned on the mizbeach. It has to be burned on the mizbeach. Now, the problem with that is v'ha kamechashev me'achilas mizbeach la'adam. If that's the case, so therefore, let's say he has the intent, as we had in our Mishnah, to eat it. So now what he's doing is he's thinking that which is normally consumed by the mizbeach, by the altar, it's supposed to be burnt, is now being consumed by a person, right? And so therefore, why should that invalidate? That doesn't seem to be, that's not a thought to burn the korban at the wrong time or place, because you're now eating that which is supposed to be burned. So Amar Shmuel, so Shmuel says Hamani, whose opinion is the Mishnah reflecting? It's Rabbi Eliezer. It's Rabbi Eliezer's opinion. To Amar, he says mechashve me'achilas mizbeach le'achilas adam u'me'achilas adam le'achilas mizbeach. You can have wrong intent to consume that which is supposed to be consumed on the mizbeach for a person or vice versa. Meaning, wrong intent. If you're going to eat, if you have in mind that you're going to eat something that is normally burnt on the mizbeach, or that you're going to burn something which is normally eaten on the mizbeach, so then that is that's still going to create pigul or invalidate your korban. Interchangeable ideas, because you're just, in order for it to be pigul, according to Rabbi Eliezer, according to Rabbi Eliezer, you need just to have the wrong intent for time and place for a consumption service. That you're consuming it appropriately is not required.
My brain's not working properly tonight.
Okay.
Tell me what pigul is again.
Pigul is when you have in mind during one of the blood services,
Right.
slaughtering, catching the blood, carrying the blood to the altar and sprinkling the blood for a consumption service to be done in the wrong time or place. Consumption services are the finishing of the blood service by sprinkling it on the mizbeach, burning the fat on the mizbeach, or consuming or eating the meat. So if you, yes,
They didn't burn chicken wings there.
no doves, lots of doves and pigeons and things. No chickens.
Was it with buffalo sauce?
No chickens.
Meat.
Sorry. So now you could. So Amar. So okay. So now, this is Rabbi Eliezer's opinion. He says that you can change it. Right. That's what he just said. Okay. Now, davar shein darko le'achol. As he says. Ditnan, we learned in the Mishnah. Hashochet es hazevach, if somebody slaughters the offering, lechol davar she'ein darko lechol, with the intent to eat outside of the proper location, something which is not normally eaten. Or lahaktir, or he's going to burn in the wrong place, davar she'ein darko lahaktir, something that is not supposed to be burned. So kosher, then the chachamim think, that's fine, because you didn't have in mind to burn something where it shouldn't be burned, or eat something where it shouldn't be eaten. You had in mind to eat something which should have been burned. That is a separate invalidation that is not pigul or puzzle. Rabbi Eliezer, posel, but Rabbi Eliezer says, regardless, that's invalid. Okay, so now, b'mai ukimta, how have you established the ruling in our Mishnah? You've established it to Rabbi Eliezer. You've established that our Mishnah follows Rabbi Eliezer's opinion. Now, Ema Seifa. Let's take a look at the end lines of the Mishnah. Zeh haklal. Here's the rule. Kol hashochet v'amakabel, which is the Mishnah, not the end of our Mishnah, but a Mishnah that is coming up on Daf Chavtas Amud Beis. Here's the rule: Kol hashochet v'amakabel v'hamolich v'hazorek. Anybody who slaughters or catches the blood or brings it close to the mizbeach or sprinkles it, le'echol davar shedarko le'echol, in order to eat that which is supposed to be eaten, u'lahaktir davar shedarko lahaktir, or to burn something which is normally burnt outside of its proper place or outside of its proper time. So then, it's pigul or it's puzzle. Now, that Mishnah states very clearly that it's only if you are eating, if your intention is to eat that which is supposed to be eaten and burn that which is supposed to be burnt. That's not Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer says it's interchangeable. So the answer is, so we said davar shedarko lechol in. If it's something that he's going to eat, then he eats it. Then okay, then it can invalidate the offering or make pigul. She'ein darko lechol lo. But if it's not something you're supposed to eat and you eat and you have intent to eat it, so then it doesn't do anything. So the answer, Asan l'Rabban in the end, seems to be following the rabbi's opinion, not Rabbi Eliezer's opinion. So what are we doing? We're switching. So the answer is Reish Rabbi Eliezer v'Seifa Rabbanan. So are you trying to say that the beginning Mishnah, the first Mishnah, is Rabbi Eliezer's opinion, and then out of the blue we just switch over to the Rabbanan's opinion? So Amar Le. So Shmuel answers in that's exactly what I'm saying. Yep, no problem. Okay, that's what I'm saying. Now, another verse that's obviously a problematic way of interpreting our Mishnah, that it's Rabbi Eliezer's opinion, and then later on we switch over to the rabbi's opinion. So Rav Huna has a different way of interpreting what's going on with the skin of this tail that is supposed to be something that is burnt, and so what's going on here? Or alya lav kalya dami. This is according to the opinion that says that the skin of the tail is not like the tail. Therefore, it's not supposed to be eaten, right? It's supposed to be, it's not supposed to be burned, it's supposed to be eaten, and therefore that's why in our Mishnah, when it says that if you intend to eat it, so then that's where it invalidates, because it's an item which can be eaten, and therefore if it's eaten, it creates psul. Okay, so now, yes.
What animal are we talking about?
Sheep.
Sheep's?
Sheep tail, yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. So Amar Rava, so Rava says, my taima, what is the reason for the Rav Huna? Why does Rav Huna say that? Because the pasuk says, it's in Vayikra Parak Gimel pasuk Tes, Vayikriv mizevach shom mishal Hashem, and the Gemara quotes Chelbo ha'aliyah, right? He's going to bring from the korban shlamim a fire to Hashem. It's fat of the tail. right? Velo or aliyah, not the skin of the tail, right? The skin that's on it is not the fat. The fat gets burnt, not the skin. So therefore, that's I guess I don't know. I guess the skin is edible. I guess the skin of a sheep. I don't know. I'm just gonna say, right? How edible is that?
Like leather?
That I would think, but it's like I don't know. Chicken skin is definitely edible, right? Cow's hide is not. So sheep are somewhere in between. I don't know, right? So okay. So now that's the explanation. So now, Kulahu kishmuel lo amri reisha kirbi yelazer v'seis v'arbanan lo mukmi. The reason why nobody likes Shmuel's answer.
You missed the.
Oh, what I do? I skipped. Rav Chisda Amar. Sorry, Rav Chisda. Next explanation, right? Third opinion. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Keep skipping lines. Rav Chisda Amar. Rav Chisda says, "Liolam or ha'elia ke'elia dami." Says, nope. The skin of the tail is like tail, supposed to be burned. The hach b'mayaskin. What's going on here? The elia shel gedi. We are dealing with This is we're dealing with the lamb, right? So therefore, the lamb, which is appropriate to be eaten. I guess the aliyah before, which animal were we dealing with? I assumed we were dealing with a sheep, but maybe
It says goat, tail of a goat.
is this one gedi? You're right, gedi.
Yeah.
God yoz a gedi. Thank you, a goat. This is now we're dealing with the goat, and a goat's tail is not brought on the mizbeach. The goat's tail is eaten, and therefore the skin of that tail is for sure also eaten, and so therefore that resolves the challenge. We're not dealing with fats of the tail of a sheep. We're dealing with the goat. Okay, now, Kulahu kishmuel lo amri. Why? Nobody likes Shmuel's answer. Why? Because his answer is Reisha Rabbi Eliezer v'sefer Rabbanan lo mokmi. He answers that the two Mishnayos are different opinions, and that we don't like that answer. Rav Huna lo amri. The reason why people don't like Rav Huna's answer is or alya kelya dami kamash malahu, because he has to hold that the skin of the tail that they don't all hold and agree that Rav Huna is correct, that the skin of the tail is like the tail, right? Maybe it's not, right?
What if they agree? Because Rav Huna is more lenient?
Rav Huna is suggesting that this pasuk, that chel boha aliyah, means that Rava says that Rav Huna explains that chel boha aliyah is the fat of the tail, not the skin of the tail is what's burnt. So it's a diuk, it's an extra, they don't learn that pasuk that way. The pasuk isn't understood that way. Rav Chisda, my time alone. What's the problem with Rav Chisda's answer? Rav Chisda's answer was that it's dealing with a different animal altogether. That seems to be a very reasonable answer. So, my kamash malon, right? So, what is this going to tell me about So then, what's the Mishnah telling me, right? There's no point to the Mishnah. Or Elia ke Elia dami, that the skin of the tail, right? So he says that, right? There's that. The skin of the tail is like the tail, meaning that the entire thing can be eaten, right? So therefore, what's the point of the Mishnah spelling that out? You could have may as well just said eating any of the rest of the meat, which we already did say. Why do we then have to go out of our way and specify eating of the tail, which is just like anything else? After all, right? So, Tanina, we learned this already, that ve'elu she'orosehen kivsaron, these are the parts where the skin is like the meat, and we say or shtachas elya, the skin, which is under the tail of the goat. So therefore, we already know that. So we don't need this Mishnah to tell me that that's acceptable to eat. So for Rav Chisda, he says no, it's tzrich. I do need this Mishnah here as well, because Salka Daitach, I would have thought to have said Hani Mililinian Tuma Derokich Mitzdarif. That which we say in the Mishnah in Chulin, that the skin of the tail is appropriate to be eaten, that's as far as Tuma is concerned, right? To consider it to be food, because we have a concept of Tumas Ochlin, which is impurity of food. So in anything that is edible, even if it's difficult to eat, is considered to be edible, it can attract tumah. And so it's mitzdaref, it can be connected with other meat, which is also edible, in order to make the proper volume to create tumah. Aval hacha, but here, ema limashcha ligdula. Right? So this, he says, but here, as far as kodshim, about eating the kodshim, this is by the gifts of the kuna. It says all of the kodshim of Bnei Israel are given to you lemashcha, which means that they are to be anointed, which means ligdula. They are for nice eating, right? The parts that are given to the Kohanim, people that what the Kohanim are supposed to eat, are the nice parts. So keder shamlachim ochim, like what the kings eat. Velo avdidi amachim dachlu hachim. Kings don't eat this, meaning it's food if you have to. So therefore, as far as tuma is concerned, it can be considered food. But it's not really good food. So therefore, we would have thought it's not considered edible, and therefore, if you have in mind to eat it outside of the location and place, it does not count.
You mean like
so
the cottage
malo.
cheese, the cottage cheese?
So, well, not like, yeah, I don't know if you don't like cottage cheese, kamash malan. So therefore comes to tell me that, therefore that no, we don't say that, and this is considered edible, and therefore if you have in mind to eat it past the time and place, it is going to ruin the offering. Okay, so now, we're going to try to prove that the skin of the tail is not like the tail, and we're going to therefore ask on Rav Chisda, because Rav Chisda, that's his presumption that the skin is edible. So Meisvei, so he asked the following question: Hashochet es ha'ola lahaktir kazayis me'or shtachas ha'elia chutz limkomo. Right, person slaughters a korban ola, right, the burnt offering, in order to burn a kazayis from the skin, which is under the tail, outside of its proper place. Puzzle, it is a invalid offering. Vein bo kares, then it is not, but there's no kares. Chutz lizmano, but if he has in mind for the wrong time, pigel, then it makes it pigel, and chayav and love kares. And now that makes you liable for kares. Okay, so now Elazar ben Yehuda ish Avelim Omer. So Elazar ben Yehuda from a town called Avelim, he says Mishum Rabbi Yaakov, in the name of Rabbi Yaakov. V'chein haya Rabbi Shimon ben Yehuda ish kfar ikus omer. Also, Rabbi Shimon ben Yehuda from a village called Ikus, he used to say, Rabbi Shimon, then Rabbi Shimon, echad or base parsos. He says the skin, which is between the eight. I think this is where between the legs of the animal of an animal. Right, behema daka of a small animal, the echad or rosh shel egel harach, or the head, the skin of a sheep, of a young sheep, the echad or shetachas ha'elya, and the skin that's under the tail, kol shemanu chachamim gabe tuma, all of the other types of skin that in chulin, all the other types of meat and things that we said when it came to Maseches chulin, that they are edible in the sense that they can transfer tuma as food. Ve'elu she'orosem kiv saran, which we learned in that Mishnah, that these are the ones that their skin is like their meat. So, or shel beis haboshes, right, the area of the reproductive organs of a female animal, right? So all of those are like meat. Right, they are edible, right, and therefore, if he shechts a korban in order to burn them outside of the proper place, chutz limikomo, pasol vein bokaris, it will invalidate the korban. Chutz lizmano, outside of the proper place, it's pigol v'chayav and alav karis, and you are going to be liable to karis. So now, here's the question: Ola in this mission, this ruling specifically refers to a korban ola, right? Because you're going to burn it, it's korban ola. So ola in. So, aval zevach, but a regular korban, which you're going to eat, right? Low. So we don't think that burning this tail is going to ruin it. So, bishlam ala Rav Huna, I understand according to Rav Huna, hainu dekatani. That's why it says here, ola, right? Only an ola, right? That you're going, because by the other animals, it's edible. So therefore, you're not going to burn it. So therefore, by an ola, since you're going to burn it, that's why this Mishnah is specifically talking about, that's why this ruling is teaching us specifically about an ola, that if you have in mind to burn it when it's not supposed to be burned, so therefore it's going to ruin it. El Rav Chisda, but according to Rav Chisda, he says the tail is like the tail, right? So therefore, my irya detani ola, so then what's the difference? Why he says ola, also tell me about a zevach.
Are you allowed to give an unedible animal for an ola?
Animals are olas, yes. So,
Even if it's unedible. What does that mean?
Inedible, like if we can't eat it.
well, olas are never edible, right? You never eat any korban ola, right?
It's an ola.
An ola is a burnt offering, right? The definition of it is it's going to be
What's
burnt.
kares?
Kares is that punishment where your life is cut short by Hashem, right? Hashem cuts you off. Yes, that's kares.
That's a big one.
Yes, so that's bad to get that. So therefore, what is it? Why is it that if Rav Chisda is correct that the skin of the Elia is like the skin of the tail is like the tail, and it should be burned just like any of the other fats, so then why an ola? It should be burned by any korban. It should be a problem of having in mind that you should burn it by any korban. So Rav Chisda says, "Ebois ema belia shigadi." Either you can answer again. It's the tail of a goat, right? And therefore it's edible. V'bois ema tani zevach. Or you can change the text here and make it so that it applies to all offerings, not just an olah, right? But either way, it doesn't really knock his opinion off. Okay, so now the Mishnah says, "Pasol ve'ein bo kares." If the intent is to eat it or to burn it or to throw the blood outside of the proper place, that invalidates the offering, but that's not going to be punishable by kares. So the Gemara wants to know, Minani Mili, where is the source for that? So Amar Shmuel says, Trei Kroi Ksiv, there are two psukim that deal with the issue of improper intent while you're bringing the korban. Maihi, so what are the two? Amar Rabba says, Pasuk number 1. So I'm going to quote the whole pasuk. Ve'im he'achol ye'achel. If you are going to certainly eat mibsar zevach shlamav, from the meat of your the sacrifice of your korban shlamim, bayom hashlishi, on the third day, lo yeratzeh, it shall no longer be valid. Hamakriv also lo yechashev. Somebody who brings it, it shall not be considered for him. Hamakriv also lo yechashev lo pigul yiyeh, it will be considered to be pigul. Vehanefesh ha'ochelas mimenu avono tisa, and somebody who eats from it will bear his sin. Now, the pasuk cannot be talking about eating, as we've said, because we've already know that there's a prohibition of nosar, which is from a different pasuk, cannot eat leftover meats. So therefore, shlishi zehu chutz lizmano. When it tells you that the third day, it means that you're having in mind when you are doing the service initially that you will consume it on the third day. Not that you're actually consuming it on the third day, but you're having in mind. And pigul, then the pasuk goes and says, doubles down again and says later on, it is pigul. Well, zehu chutz limkomo. That's a separate pasuk. We already know outside of the proper place is punishable. So pigul is something else. Pigul is outside of its proper place. Now that's actually interesting because when we use the phrase pigul in the Mishnah, it actually means outside of its proper time. But since the pasuk specifically says outside of its proper time, that they're both really pigul, I guess, right? Outside of its proper time is the real pigul. And outside of its proper place, the Torah calls pigul, but it means outside of its proper place. Then it says, "V'hanefesh ha'ochelas mimenu," right? Somebody who eats from it, he bears his sin, right? That is kares, right? That's a punishment of kares. As we're going to see later on Amud Beis, that the avonati saw, there's a drosh that's going to teach me that means kares. Okay, so now, echad velo shnayim. It says, somebody who eats from it, right? Singular form. Mimenu is singular form, which means one of these two prohibitions results in kares. Either eating it outside the proper time or proper place. So, zehu chutz lizmano, only the one outside of its proper time gets kares, not the one outside of its proper place. Okay, so now, the Gemara asks on Rabba's drosha, ve'ema, v'hanefesh ochelas mimenu zehu chutz limkomo, v'lumute chutz lizmano. How do you know that the one that has kares is the one that is outside the right time? Maybe the one that gets kares is the one outside its proper place. So the answer is mistabra chutz lizmano adif. It sounds proper that the one that's more strict is the one outside of its proper time. Why? De pasach be, because that's the first one in the pasuk. The Torah is going to tell you the one that's the bigger prohibition first. Therefore, whichever one is the bigger prohibition, that's the one you get kares. We know the pasuk is telling us only one of them gets kares. It's got to be the first one. Okay, that's, but adrabba, chutz lemekomo adif. No, 1 second. Maybe outside the proper place is the more severe one. Why? Desamichle, because if you read the pasuk, the one that is written last, then it then goes back and specifies avonu tisa, you're going to get kares for it. So the one that's written last is written right by the punishment. Maybe that's the more severe one. Ella Amar Abai. So Abai says, I'm going to give you a better answer, right? We're going to leave the problem with Rabbah as an unanswered, and we're going to try Abaye. Ki also Rav Yitzchak bar Rav Dimi, Amar Rav Marisa bar Dimi came from Israel. He said the name of Rav, Samich Aditani Tano. So we're going to learn what we were relying on. That was written in a brisa. Keshu Omer, when the pasuk says, Shlishi, Beparshas Kedoshim Tiyu, there's another pasuk that says, He'achol ye'achel bayom hashlishi, pigol hu lo yiratzeh. That pasuk is in Kedoshim, Parshas Kedoshim. Is that the same pasuk? I'm saying, just double check. That's the same pasuk. Zayin Yud Ches. and this is pasuk Yud Tes Parak Zayin, Yud Tes pasuk Zayin, right? This is a different pasuk, right? Same sounds very similar. So this pasuk again says if you're going to eat on the third day, it's pigul, it will not be acceptable. That's in Parshas Kedoshim to you. That's going to be the second pasuk. We're going to call that the one in Parshas Kedoshim. And She'ein Talmud Lomar, I don't need that pasuk because we already know that if it's outside the proper place, that it's considered or to be pigul. Sherei Kvar Nemar, as it said, already told us in Vayikra, which is Parshas Tzav, I believe, right? In Vayikra Zayin Yudches, Parshas Tzav, Im He'achol Ye'achel Mibzar Zevach Shashlamim Bayom HaShlishi, that if you eat from this korban on the third day, so therefore I already know that Meno Inyan L'chutz Lizmano, so if that pasuk, the second pasuk, can't be repeating something we already know, so therefore it's not going to be telling me that eating something outside of the proper, we're on Chav Chesem and Aleph, that if you're going to be eating it outside of the proper time, make that second pasuk dealing with outside of its proper place. And the pasuk says, right, the whole pasuk is ve'ochlav avono yisa, the ones who eat it will carry his sin. Ki has kodesh Hashem chilel, because he has profaned the korban. Ve'nichrasa hanefesh hahi me'ameha, and his soul will be cut off. Okay, so now that pasuk, right, that pasuk is talking about nosar, right, because umiyat rachmana gabe nosar. By nosar, it says very clearly that's the one you get kares for. Ve'ochlav avono yisa, that only if you have nosar of the averos written in this section, which is one is chutz lemikomo, right? You're going to eat outside the proper place, and the other one is going to be eating nosar.
What's
only nosar is leftover meat past its expiration date, right? Past, you're only not allowed to eat it on the third day, right? So if you eat that, then you get kares. So therefore, that means only it gets that avera of kares. That means that eating it outside the proper time does not get kares. And therefore, by default, you're left with who gets kares in the first section. The answer is somebody who eats it beyond the proper, who has intent for beyond the proper time. Okay, now, why don't you say the opposite? Why don't you say in the second pasuk that it's nosar that doesn't get kares, leaving the meat over that doesn't get kares, and eating it outside the proper place does get kares? So the answer is mistaber nosar havalelim okmei b'kares. It makes sense that eating the meat outside of the proper time, that's the thing that gets you kares, because lemigmar avon lechutz lizmano. Because if you do that, then we can see that the word avono yisa, and avono tisa, what's the punishment? We said he's carrying his sin. Well, what sin is it? So if you're going to tell me that nosar is kares, then they're telling me what the punishment of having intent beyond the right time is as well, through a gzera shava, and you're telling me it's also kares. Right? The damile be, and it makes sense to apply that because chutz lizmano, not the same time, is the damile be zav. Two ways. In that, number one, zman, it has to do with time, right? One is actually eating it beyond the right time. One is having intent beyond the right time. And the other one is bama. The other one is also, these things are, even during the times of the bama, these intents are going to nullify and make it wrong, right? Ruin the korban. Obviously, during the times of a bama, eating it outside the proper place wouldn't invalidate it because by definition,
who was the bama?
The bama was when you had a personal altar, right? Before the Beis HaMikdash was established, you can have a sacrifice, you can have an altar in your backyard and bring your korbanos there.
Really?
Yeah. So therefore, that was right. You see it in the Torah. Avram Avinu does it. Yitzchak, everybody does it, right?
No.
They all bring korbanos. And we've learned about it, right?
What's in the mnemonic zav?
The mnemonic means that the letters Zayin stands for one word, and Beis Bama stands for the second item, and the first item is Zman, that they're both relating to an invalidation relating to time, and the other one is invalidation relating to Bama. Okay, so that's that. Now, Adirabba, 1 second. Let's look at the other way. Make more sense to say that the one that we left out, that outside the proper place is the one that gets kares. Why? Lemigmar avon lechutz lizmano. And then, if that's the case, then the gzera shava is going to be from chutz l'mekomo, outside the proper place, back to tell me that chutz lizmano, that outside the proper time, intent for outside the proper time is also going to be punishable by kares. Dedamile mikdash, because it has four things that are similar to it. Number one, machshava, having intent outside the right time and having intent out the right side place are similar in that they have wrong intents. Number two, ktsas, that they are both nullified if some of the offering, not all of it. Number three, dam, it's also nullified by a blood. Both of them are nullified if you have intent during the blood service. And shlishi, and the third one, both of them say the word shlishi on the third, right? Both of those psukim. So therefore, it makes better sense. Okay, so now we still are stuck with the lack of clarity as to where this drush comes from, that why it would be, right, that we're establishing the pasuk that nosar, right, gets kares, not having intent for outside the proper place. So Ella Rabbi Yochanan, so Rabbi Yochanan says, Tani Zavdi Bar Levi taught that the reason why the pasuk which says that you're going to get that pasuk in Kedoshim, Parshas Kedoshim, is going to be talking about nosar because Asya Kodesh, right? It's going to become, there's going to be a Gzera Shava from the word Kodesh and Kodesh. Ksiv Hacha, it says over here, by this, by the Avera, whichever one that we're dealing with that gets kares is, as Kodesh Hashem Chilel v'nichrasa, the holy objects of Hashem he has profaned, and now his soul gets cut off. Uksiv Hasam, and then in Sefer Shmos, Perkov Tas Lamedalet, it says, V'saraf das hanosar ba'esh, you're going to burn the nosar, the leftover meat gets burned in fire. Right? Lo yachel ki kodesh, you can't eat it because it's kodesh. I think that's dealing with Korban Pesach, if I'm not mistaken. So therefore, you're supposed to burn the leftovers. So therefore, you see that the word kodesh relates to leftover meat. Therefore, here, when it talks about which one, the one that's kodesh gets kares, it's the leftover meat. Nosar gets kodesh, which means that outside the proper place does not get kares, which means that you go back to the first pasuk, and it's the chutz lizmano outside the proper time that gets kares, not the one outside the proper place. Now, ma'alahalan nosar, just like the one in Parsha Shmos is dealing with nosar, leftover meat. Afkan, also here, when we're in Parshas Kedoshim Tiyu, it's nosar. Omiyat rachmana gabe nosar, and then the Torah specifies by, when it's talking about nosar, that only nosar, only the prohibition of leftover meat gets you kares, not having your intent to do it outside of the proper place. That does not get you kares. Okay, so now, my chazis, we're still not done with this, okay? My chazis, okay, we're still going to, dekra aricha bechutz lizmano, ushlishi de parshas kedoshim tiyu chutz lemekomo. How are we deciding, right? We've established that in the long pasuk is the one in Parshas Tzav. It's a longer pasuk, okay? That's what we're going to call it. It's the long pasuk. How do we know that that pasuk is telling us that kares goes to somebody who has the intent to eat it beyond its proper time? And the word shlishi, right, bayom shlishi, that's talking about outside the proper time. In Parshas Kedoshim Tiyu is chutz lemekomo, that's talking about outside the proper place. Epoch ana, let's flip that around. Why not say that outside the proper time is in Parshas Kedoshim, and therefore outside the proper time is the one that doesn't get kares, and the one that's in the long pasuk, back in Parshas Tzav, is talking about outside the proper place, and that one does get kares. So the answer is mistabra aricha bechutz lizmano. It makes better sense that the pasuk in Parshas Tzav is talking about intent outside of the proper time. De gamar avon minosar, because we're learning the Gzera Shava from nosar after all, which we've now thoroughly proven that pasuk is dealing with nosar. De dami le bezav, because it's similar to the nosar, as we said, in two ways. That it is an invalidation regarding time and an invalidation that was applicable during the times of the Bama. Yes, but we're going to say, one second. Adirabba makes more sense the other way. Aricha, the long pasuk, should be bechutz l'mekobo, should be dealing with outside of the proper location. Ushlishi, and then the pasuk in Parshas Kedoshim, Shlishi de Kedoshim Tiyu, the word shlit, the pasuk that's talking about three on the third day on Kedoshim Tiyu, bechutz l'zmano should be outside the right time. Mishum d'dami le samchei v'kamemayit le, because, right, it is similar. One second. Mishum d'dami le samchei become moile, because it's similar and therefore it is being excluded, right? We would put the two of those together, having intent outside the right time and actually eating the meat outside the right time. The pasuk wants to tell me only one of those two things gets you actually kares. So, okay, you're right. At the end of the day, after going through all of that, it's not really conclusive. Can't really assign which pasuk goes to which thing. So therefore, Elamar Rava. So Rava says, okay, here's what we're going to do. Everything, the whole rules of everything come from Mikra Aricha Asyan. Everything comes from the long pasuk. Forget Kedoshim
That was
Tiyuvim.
all Abaye.
Yes,
right?
that was all Abaye.
Okay.
So now we're up to Rava. Now Rava says, okay, we're going to now decide that we're going to talk about the pasuk in Parshas Tzav. Dichsiv, the pasuk says, first of all, Hey achol yeachel. Now we're going to go through each phrase in that pasuk and tell me what the drush is. What is it that those words are teaching me? Hey achol yeachel. If you will come to eat it. B'shtei achilos hakosav medaber. The pasuk is telling us that the avera, whichever avera it is that we're talking about, either outside the proper time or outside the proper place, is consumption, either of two types of consumption, meaning echad achilas adam, whether a human being is consuming it, i.e. edible meat, ve'echad achilas mizbeach, or whether it's being burnt on the mizbeach, or the blood is being sprinkled on the mizbeach, right? Either way, that can create pigul. Then the pasuk continues on, mi besar zevach shlamav, from the sacrifice of his peace offering. So, ma shlamim mefaglin umispaglin, just like when it comes to a korban shlamim, so the blood can become pigul, right? You can make the korban pigul by having intent during a blood service, right? And also the prohibition. One second. Mefagin umispalgin. Shadam mefag. The blood, that's what it is. It's two ways. Both the blood can make the korban into pigul, and once the korban is made into pigul, then the blood will become pigul. The rest of the korban can become based on the blood. I think I said the same thing twice, right? When you had the wrong intent during the service of the blood, so then that will make the korban pigul, and the meat and the sacrificial parts, they become pigul through thought during the service of the blood, right? It goes both ways. Mm-hmm. So now, Afkol mefaglin umispaglin. So that is also the rule by all korbanos, not just a rule by shlamim, right? Zevach shlamav tells me that this rule of pigul applies to all korbanos as well, right? Which, if you have certain types of korban minchas, right, that they don't have two different parts, right? The matir and the nitar, which is the matir is the blood, right? By sprinkling the blood, you make the meat acceptable, right? So you have a matir, which is the thing that makes it acceptable, and then the meat that becomes acceptable. Both the blood can make the korban pigul, and the meat becomes the subject of the prohibition of pigul. So too with even so those korbanos that don't have that, you have one item which is both the permitted and the item that is being burned, right? That like which is the what do you call it? The scoop, the komets, right? So there is no din and pigul that is appropriate by them because you don't have a matir and a nitar. You don't have both that which creates the pigul and the permitted item that comes as a result.
What's matir and mita?
Matir is the thing that makes something else in the korban permitted. The blood, sprinkle the blood, makes the meat permitted. Matir is the blood. The nitar, the thing that becomes permitted, is the what do you call it? The thing that makes the meat permitted. The meat is the thing that becomes permitted. That's the matir in the nitar. Okay, so now shlishi, the next word in the pasuk, shlishi, ze chutz lizmano. Shlishi means that you have intent to have bring the sacrifice outside of its proper time. Lo yeratzeh, right? So it will not be accepted, right? So that means that it sounds like it means that once this intention is done, the sprinkling will not be acceptable. So kehartzos kosher, kein hartzos posel. So just like the way that a korban becomes acceptable and becomes kosher, so too that's the method that has to be in place in order to make this sacrifice into pigul. How so? Ma'artzos kosher, just like a korban becomes acceptable, ad sheyakrivu kol matirov, is not considered acceptable until you have brought close the permitter, right, which is the sprinkling of the blood, right, the shrita, kabbalah, holach, and zrika. You have to do all four of those things. Now it's a kosher korban. So posel, so too, it's not pigul until you complete ad sheyakrivu kol matirov, until you do all four of those services as well. Once you've sprinkled the blood, then in a kosher way, then the meat becomes pigul, right? If you, let's say, for example, take the blood and you just spill it out, then you eat meat, it's not pigul meat because it never went through the whole process. Okay, then the pasuk continues. Hamakriv, the one who brings it close, ba'akrova hu nifsal, by bringing it close, meaning that he's bringing it during the time of the offering of the service, during the blood services, he has intent in the future, veino nifsal b'shlishi, but it doesn't mean that he actually eats it on the third day, right? That if he has in mind while he's consuming it on the third day, that he has in mind that he wants to, that he wants to now make it invalid. You can't. It's nosar now. It's not pigul. You can't retroactively make the korban into pigul, right? That's what the pasuk says. It's hamakriv. It only becomes pigul during the actual blood service process. Then the pasuk continues and says, "Oh, so." It, meaning, that the prohibition, right, is on the korban, not the kohen. So, meaning that the pasuk says that this is now invalid. Well, what's invalid? The korban or the person who brought it? Are we saying the kohen is now thrown out of service? Can't use him ever again? No. The kohen can still go on to his next korban tomorrow. He's not invalidated. The korban is invalidated. That's what the pasuk oso means. Then the pasuk says, lo yeh chashev. We're continuing through every word of this pasuk as I said. Lo yeh chashev. It shall not be considered. So that means, mikan shelo ye'arev bo machshavos achiros. You cannot intermingle, or in Daf Chav Tes Amud Aleph, you cannot intermingle other prohibited thoughts together with it. Meaning, because once you mingle in other prohibited thoughts, then the korban is invalid, the sacrifice is invalid. And if your sacrifice is invalid, as we learned Rava yesterday, then it can't be pigul. It can only have a korban be pigul if it's otherwise valid, except for this one problem. Then the pasuk says pigul, right? Now the pasuk says it becomes pigul. Zechutz l'mekomo. That means outside of its proper place, right? That's what it means because it's extra. Then it says yiyeh, it shall be melamed shemitztarfin ze im ze. So this means to tell me that. That if you have a half a volume of meat that was brought with the intent for it to be outside the proper time, and then you have half a volume of meat in order that was brought outside of its proper place, so then, or I guess if he has intent during the sacrifice that he's going to do half of it, he's going to eat half of a kazais outside of his proper time, and he's going to eat half of it with a kazais outside of the proper place, so then it will invalidate the korban. It combines together. They combine together because they're in the same pasuk, and the pasuk now says yiyeh. Even though they're two separate isurim, it sounds like they're two separate isurim. They combine together for the shear of the more lenient punishment. Then the pasuk says v'hanefesh ha'ocheles mimenu, the soul that eats from it is going to get his sin. Echad velo shnayim. So this means that the only way to get kares is ocheles mimenu singular. Right? So if you have, it will not combine together for kares. Ve'ezeh, and which one of these two is the one that you get kares for? Zechutz lizmano. It's the one outside of its proper time, the intent of outside the proper time. Digmar avon minosar, because there's a gzera shava of avono you saw from nosar, didami le bezav, because nosar is similar in that it has an invalidation due to time, and that's similar to intent outside the proper time, and also that it was an invalidation by bama, which is similar, both of them outside the proper time, right, were invalidations by bama. Okay, that's the drush. Now, since we have this whole drush of the psukim, right, that's our conclusion. So now it seems clear, right, from that drush, right, that which one is the one that gets kares, which one is not, right? The one that is chutz lizmano, outside of its proper time, is the one that gets you kares, not the one outside of its proper place. Amar le Rav Papa le Rava. So Rav Papa says to Rava, ledidach, okay, according to you, right? So shlishi, the parshas kedoshim to you, my droshpe. Okay, you just ignored the whole second pasuk, right? That's your only. We don't need the second pasuk. Well, then why do you have it? Why is there a second pasuk? So the answer is hahumi baile lemakom sheyehi mishulash bedam babasarei murin. The answer is, in order to tell me that the intent has to be that you are going to bring the korban in a location that you're going to eat the blood or to burn the emurim in a place that is appropriate for the mitzvos of blood, meat, and burning the sacrifices, right? So that is only going to be inclusive of an area outside of the azara, outside of the courtyard, because during the times of the bamos, you could have brought a korban outside of the Beis Hamikdash. So therefore, a korban was valid outside the Beis Hamikdash. You know where it doesn't count is inside the Beis Hamikdash itself. You never, even during the times of the bamos, were ever able to sacrifice and bring a korban inside the Beis Hamikdash. Right? It's always the courtyard, and outside of the Beis Hamikdash was okay, but inside the Beis Hamikdash itself was never okay. Therefore, if you have in mind to bring the blood to eat the blood eat the meat inside the Beis Hamikdash, that's not invalidating service because of this pasuk, because of that second pasuk, this bashlishi. That's what that pasuk is for. Okay, so now, which is because the shlishi mishulash and needs all three. So now, typically, why do I need that pasuk? Because after all, typically mikrakam, I could just use the first pasuk of tzav. Im he'achol ye'achel. If you will eat it from the Zevach of Shlomim by Yom HaShlishi on the third day, right? We're going to explain that by Yom HaShlishi. So why don't we just tell it, right? So even though that midafke rachmana bilashon shlishi. So even though we said by Yom HaShlishi is talking about outside of its proper time, not outside of its proper place, still it uses a strange phrase on the third. Why use the word third? So maybe it's mashma both things. Right? It tells me both that it is on the third day, intent on the third day, or that it needs to have all three, it has to be in a location where all three things. Mm-hmm. So Rav Ashi says, Amrisa l'shma'is kamei Rav Matana. I said this in front of Rav Matana, and Amar Li, he said to me, Imei hasam, if I would have tried to learn it from the first pasuk, Havamin, I would have thought, Shlishi prat pigul. That shlishi prat, that the word shlishi means that that's going to exclude someplace. And as we said, it's going to exclude the Beis Hamikdash area. Pigul, then the word pigul comes along afterwards, and that would be a klal. That would come to include places. And therefore, nasa klal mosif al prat, the klal is going to add on to vis rabu shar mekomos, and now that means that not only these places that are outside the Beis Hamikdash are acceptable, but even those places, right? You would have thought that it comes to exclude the Beis Hamikdash, but now comes this extra phrase, and it's going to re-include the Beis Hamikdash. So Kamash Malan. So therefore, the second pasuk says no. It requires mishulash from the second pasuk, where it doesn't say the word pigul again afterwards, because then that's there's no confusion that way. Everybody feels not confused? Okay, good. Okay, fine.
You confused right there.
Okay, good. So now, continuing on. Tana Rabban and Rabbi's word. If you will eat from the flesh of the korban of his korban shlamim. So Rabbi Elazar says, Kof aznecha lishmoa. You got to bend your ear and hear this, right? And he's saying this because it seems a little bit counterintuitive. You got to pay attention to this. Because you have to know that the pasuk, the language of the pasuk, doesn't sound like what it really means. And so, "B'mechashev lecho mizivcho bayom hashlishi akasav medaber." This pasuk does not mean that you're actually eating it on the third day, which is if you read the pasuk without knowing this Gemara, you would think that's what it means. It means, as we've been saying up till this point, that you have to have intent to eat it on the third day. That's what kind of invalidation that we're dealing with. So, Amart. So now, does that make sense? Achar shehu kosher yachzor v'yipasel. Why is it that you have to say it this way? Because it would make no sense otherwise. The korban was kosher, and then you eat the korban on the third day, and now it goes back and becomes invalidated. Now, think about what that means.
Becomes invalidated.
That would be what the understanding of this pasuk would be if you said that it meant eating it on the third day. The pasuk says, right? It's yechalel, it becomes invalidated, the korban becomes invalidated. Okay. That means, let's say like this, the guy brought his korban, it was atoned, it worked, he satisfied his korban, guy goes home, right? Now, 3 days later, he eats the korban outside of the proper time, and now you're going to tell me retroactively his korban is batal? Now he has to bring another one?
Because it says...
It's invalid.
Because it says at the end of the pasuk, lo yeretzeh.
Yes,
okay.
Or it's out, right, yeah. Pasuk says. So, okay. So, Rabbi Akiva asks on Rabbi Eliezer, right? Amar lo Rabbi Akiva. Hein matzinu bezav v'zava v'shomeres yom keneged yom shein becheskas tahara. Right? Well, we have this idea that somebody thinks that everything's fine, and then you have to go back retroactively and change your mind, and it turns out it's not fine. For example, right, by a zav and a zava. How does it work? Right? Somebody who sees an emission on the first time, so you become impure for a single day. You see emissions on further days, then your tuma increases. And it turns out you're tummy for 7 days. Turns out you have to bring a korban. Well, Kavan Sharo, so he's watching every day. So now he thinks, right, that he's tahor. The Kavan Sharo, now if he sees blood on the day that he goes to the mikvah, sasru, so it's going to invalidate all the days, the clean days that you've counted, and turns out that you are tameh all along, right? So now, afata al tatam al zeh. So why are you so astonished about this, that you have to retroactively invalidate a korban? That doesn't seem so bad. Shaval pisha hukshar, even though you thought it was kosher, shiachsri pasel, go back and it's retroactively pasel. We have such halachos that are like that. So Amar Le, Rabbi Eliezer says to Rabbi Akiva, Harehu Omer, the pasuk says, Hamakriv, right? The pasuk says that Lo Yerotzeh Hamakriv. And you have to explain it like this, that Bishas Hakravahu Nifsal Ve'eno Nifsal Bashlishi, right? That it will not, the one who, when it is being brought, it shall be invalidated, not that it will be invalidated afterwards, right? It has to be invalidated, right? It's not that it's going to be invalidated by eating it after some time. It has to be invalidated at the time that it is brought by an intention to do something wrong in the future. Okay. Oh, Eino Omer Hamakriv, Ella Zeh Kohen Hamakriv. Well, maybe the word Hamakriv doesn't mean that it has to be invalidated at the time that it is brought. Maybe the word Hamakriv means the person who is bringing the korban, the Kohen is bringing the korban, he becomes invalid. He can't be a Kohen anymore. So the answer is Kishomer Oso. We already explained. When the word in the pasuk says Oso, it becomes invalidated. Zevachim medaber vein medaber Kohen. That is how we know that it only means the korban is invalidated, not the person. The person is okay. Okay, so now Ben Azai Omer. Ben Azai explains the word Oso. He explains the word Oso differently. He says Ma Talmud Lomar. What is the word Oso? What is the word Oso teaching me? Lefisha Namar. Since the pasuk says that you're not allowed to take a oath to Hashem, lo te'acher l'shalmo, right? You're not allowed to delay. If you promise that you're going to give something, you're not allowed to delay, right, past 3 holidays, right? You can't go past, right? If you made a pledge on Simchas Torah, you've got to pay that pledge. You've got Pesach, Shavuos, and into the next Sukkot. That's what you've got. You got to have it done.
Which we did here.
Sukkot. Sholosh regalim, like 3 regalim, you got to pay by sukkahs. Okay, so that's how you got to make sure. Now, if you had your pledge by Pesach time, so if you made your pledge right before Pesach, it's still going to be Pesach, Shavuos, Sukkot, right? You've got 3 holidays, right? So now Yocho, maybe that's why the custom is to auction off so much by you're supposed to get the maximum time to pay it off. So, lefi shenamar lo ta'achir l'shamos. He says, Yocho af me'achir nidro be'lo yeratzeh. I might think that the pasuk is telling me that, let's say you delay your pledge, right? You say, I'm going to bring a korban. And then you don't bring your korban, you delayed your pledge past 3 Yomim Tovim, so maybe now if you try to bring your pledge, it won't be accepted. It's too late. Your pledge expired. Talmud Lomer, therefore the pasuk says, oh so. Only this korban is not valid. Oh so, below yeratzeh ve'ein hama'achar nidro below yeratzeh. Only this korban of pigul is not accepted. Not one that is a delayed offering is not accepted. Achirim omrim, others say, lo yechashev, it will not be considered. B'machshava hu nifsal ve'eno nifsal b'yom shlishi. That is literally, it says that the pasuk says it's intent, right? It's a matter of intent. Not that you actually are consuming it on the third day, but you're intending to do it on the third day.
That seems like the simplest one.
Doesn't it?
Yeah.
We save it for the end. Okay, so now, uben azai de bezevach kosev medaber ve'ena bekohen minole. Now, according to Ben Azai, who just said that this word oso is teaching me something different than everybody else, where's his source that the kohen comes out okay after he brings the korban invalid? So ibois ema nafgale mi de achirim. Either he can explain it like the achirim explain it, lo yechashev, that the lo yechashev, so therefore it tells the word hamakriv, right? The only reason you thought that the kohen would be invalid is because you thought maybe the word hamakriv means the kohen. Yeah. Well, hamakriv doesn't mean the kohen if the way that we know that the korban is invalidated comes from the words lo yechashev, then we know the entire problem is intent, right? We only needed the word hamakriv to tell me, right, right? Otherwise we would, right? So we don't need that. Or else I would have thought, lo yeratzeh, since it says it will not be desired, lo yeratzeh zivchahu. That language is it will not be desired is a language that you use not by a kohen, not by a person, but by a korban. Well, Ben Azai, now as a Ben Azai, oso below yeratzeh ve'ein ma'achar nidro below yeratzeh. He says, right, that only this korban is not going to be accepted, but if you delay your neder, so that's still going to be accepted. Mehacha nafka, is that where he learns it from? Midachirim nafka. He learns it from another place, right? From where achirim learn it from. Detalias are others learn in a brisa. Achirim omrim yochel yehei bechor she'ibro shenaso. Let's say you have a firstborn, and you're supposed to bring it in its first year, and you don't bring it in its first year. Kip sule hamukdoshim v'yipasel. So it says though it has a blemish and it becomes invalidated. That's what I would have thought. Talmud Lomar, the pasuk says, "V'achalta lifnei Hashem elokecha masar degancha." You should eat it before Hashem. The tithing of your grains and the firstborn of your cattle, etc., continues on there. Makish bechor lemaser. We're going to say the firstborn and the tithes are the same, right? So therefore, ma maser eno nifsal mishana lechaverta. Just like if I take tithes and I don't eat it this year, it's not invalid. I can always bring my tithes next year, right? We have to get rid of it every 3 years, right? Every 3 years, we have to show up to the Beis HaMikdash and make a video and say we got rid of it. But you have some time. You don't have to do it all in the first year. So therefore, bechor, af bechor, eino nifsal mishana chaverta. So too, firstborn is not nullified from 1 year to the next. So therefore, I already know that I can bring a korban later on. So therefore, the pasuk, the Gemara answers, it's trich. I need it because I would have thought this said honey mili bechor delav baratzahu, that the bechor is not really a promised. It doesn't come to an atonement. It's not a promised atonement offering. So therefore, that's the rule by a bechor. Aval kodshim, but other offerings to bnei artzaninu, they have to be acceptable. So ema lo leiratzu. We might think, well, you delayed it, then it's not acceptable. Kamash and so therefore, now this pasuk also tells me even in other korbanos. Vakasi mehasam nafka. Still, is that your source? The pasuk says v'haya bechochet, that if you don't bring it, you will get a sin if you don't bring your offering, you don't bring your pledge on time. V'lo bekorban chochet. That means there's nothing wrong with your sacrifice. There's nothing wrong with you. Ben Azai, so Abai says hahi ahumi boile. We need that. Is v'haya bechochet v'lo beishte chochet. That if you delay paying your pledge, you will be punished, not your wife. Your wife doesn't get punished because salka daita chamina. I would have thought to have said, Ho, v'amar Rabbi Elazar. Since Rabbi Elazar said, v'itim Rabbi Yochanan, some said it was Rabbi Yochanan, ein ishto shel adam mesa, ela im kein mevakshin mimenu mamon, ve'ein lo. The reason why a person gets punished that his wife would die is if he stole money, and when they come to tell him that he has to pay it back, he doesn't have it.
If you're
then
going to get punished, that's a true shalom bias.
sorry.
If you're going to get punished, is a true shalom bias.
That's always good not to punish, right? So Shenamar, the pasuk says, "Im ein lecha l'sholem lama yikach mishkavcha mitachtecha." Right, as the pasuk says, if you don't have what to pay back, why should Hashem take your wife from you? Mishkavcha is loosely translated in this context as your wife. So the high avon debal ta'achar nami. So we think, oh, so maybe if you have a pledge and they say, "Hey, pay your pledge," and he says, "I don't have it," she might also die. Kamash mulan, no. That's only you. You get punished for that, not your wife. Acherim omrim. Okay, so now let's just finish this off to the Mishnah. Acherim omrim. Others say, b'machshavahu nifsal veino nifsal b'shlishi. Right, that he is going to. It's going to be invalidated by thought. It's not going to be invalidated by actually eating it on the third day. Rabbi Eliezer lo yichshav ma'avid le. So now Rabbi Eliezer had a whole different version of this pasuk. So what does he do with this pasuk lo yichashev? You should not calculate. Rabbi Yanai. He uses it according to Rabbi Yanai. Says Rabbi Yanai says minayin lemachshavos shemotzias zo mizo. How do I know that if you have a thought of pigul, and then you change your mind and you have another psul, so then the korban is not pigul. The later psul ruins the thought of earlier pigul. Shnemar, the pasuk says, lo yechashev, right? You shall not think about it. So therefore, lo ye'erbo machshavos achiros, in order for it to be pigul, it cannot be mixed together with other thoughts. Rav Mari Masni, Rav Mari taught as follows: Lo yechashev, Amar Rabbi Yanai, minayin lemechashev b'kodshim shehu loke. How do I know that if somebody has an intent that ruins and invalidates an offering, he gets malchus? Talmud Lomar, the pasuk says, Lo yechashev. You shall not change a kohen is not supposed to think a thought that is going to invalidate this korban during his service. So as Yehuda says, what happens to him if he does? Malchus, according to Rav Mari. Amar Ravashi Rav Mari. Ravashi says to Rav Mari, what are you talking about? You got Malchus? Lav Shem B'Maisahu. It's a losaseh that's based in your mind. You didn't say it. You didn't do anything. So how are you going to get Malchus? We learned in Maseches Makos. You don't. It doesn't, right? When it comes to lashes, the thought does not count. So therefore, Sekol Lav Shein B'Maisa Ein Lo Kan Lav. Any losaseh that has no action, you don't get Malchus for it. Amar Le. So he said back to the Rabbi Yehuda. This is Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. To Amar Lav Shein B'Maisa Lo Kan Lav. He says in Maseches Makos, he says in Shuas that if you have a losaseh Shein Bo, that if you have a losaseh that even doesn't have an action, you still get Malchus for it. Okay.
The same is true of chatas, right? You don't bring a chatas for machshava, right? You can't bring a chatas for doing pigul.
You cannot bring a korban chatas, right? Because it has to be. You only bring korban chatas if, pigul, right? Maybe pigul you would, because it is. If you do it b'mezid, you get kares. So then b'shogeg you would bring. But the question is, how are you bringing?
You haven't done anything.
You'd have to. It. Yeah, you'd have to do it, but you would get mezid. It's a good question. You'd have to do pigul b'shogeg, and then you'd be chayev. You'd be chayev a chatas in that circumstance. I don't know that chatas requires an action. It just requires kares, right?
It might require action, but maybe not a chatas.
Yeah, because that's based because chatas is based on kares. He said. Okay. So summary quickly, as we just had about 4 or 5 different ways to learn the halachos of pigul, but essentially the Mishnah told us most of what we have to take forward with us, and that is the intention ruins a korban. If you have the intention outside the proper place, or that then it's not going to be kares. As we learned from different psukim, that which ones we're going to exclude. If you eat the korban beyond the proper time, that is kares. And if you are going to eat the meat after you slaughter it with intent outside the proper time, it is also kares.
Right. But here's the question: what's the halacha l'maisa of this whole sugya?